Hey, Foreclosure Fix family, and welcome to another episode of the Foreclosure Fix Podcast, where our goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. Now, if the mission to help 1 million homeowners resonates with you, please do us a favor, like, subscribe, and share the podcast with someone who you know it can benefit. Or you can give them a copy of our new book, The Foreclosure Fix, 12 Proven Steps to Beat the Bank, Escape Foreclosure, and Turn Your Property into a Profitable Asset. I'm your host, DJ Olojo, and on today's podcast, I am talking to my buddy, Nathan Turner. We are talking about all things DME coming up here in a couple weeks, and we are just talking about how to help homeowners who are facing foreclosure. And so, Nathan, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today?
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you. Yeah, good. It's a good day. Sun's out, warming up. Springtime is here. It's good.
Awesome. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Nathan Turner, Nathan is a seasoned real estate professional and investor, but he is affectionately known in our industry as the Canadian note guy because he lives in Canada, but he invests in the United States. And him and his amazing wife put on a conference called the Diversified Mortgage Expo that's coming up in a few short weeks in Nashville, Tennessee. Nathan, can you give our listeners just a little bit more insight into like what the conference is about? What are you doing there and the folks who you're bringing together?
Yeah, so we are super excited. This is our second year putting it on. It's the conference's 9th annual conference, but our second time. Just we're newbies at this, but we love doing this. We love putting on a big show like this. And who we're trying to get there is anybody who is in the note world. That could be anybody from realtors who are looking to offer an alternative to some of their clients, where they can do some seller financing, people who are doing the actual seller financing, people who are buying those seller finance notes, anybody and everybody. And then all the vendors included with that, servicers, we've got RMLOs, people that can help create those notes, and just everybody that surrounds that. So there's hundreds of people that'll be there, all talking about notes and how we can just work together. And we're so excited to put it on again.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that information. We talk about helping 1 million homeowners, and that's something that we can't do by ourselves. And so just know DJ Olojo will be in the building, and the goal is just to connect with other people who are in the space and to figure out ways in which we can help homeowners not only just stay in their homes, but provide solutions that are sometimes unconventional and what big banks can't do, the smaller players can do. And so just super excited about that conference coming up, and just thought you should definitely let our listeners know, because if you are industry professional and you're going to be in the area, please check it out. It's going to be a great conference. Nathan, also go ahead and give our listeners just some information on how to find out more about that conference.
Yeah, so the best place to go is to the website, diversifiedmortgageexpo.com, and just all the information's there. We're just actually loading up the speakers today, so that'll be up there by the time somebody goes clicks on it and looks at it. And so excited. I can't wait. This, if you look back in history, the United States of America, in particular, Canada, much to a lesser extent, but the United States was built by entrepreneurs. And so that's what we're looking for. People who, best definition of entrepreneur that I know of is somebody who solves problems for profit. And I think that's exactly right. That's what we do. We help solve problems.
Excellent. So now you did not just start your career as a conference promoter or anything like that, right? You have been in the note industry for numerous years, and you've helped tons of different homeowners find ways in which they can save their homes. And, what I want to dive into with you today is just really talking about kind of the best tips, tricks, and strategies that you've seen for homeowners who may be facing foreclosure, and what recommendations you have for them along the way. And so if you could just go ahead and share with our listeners kind of some of those highlights or best insights you've seen on the homeowners you've seen successful in navigating that foreclosure journey.
So there's a few things there to unpack, because most people have their mortgages with a conventional bank. And I'll say this, and I'll be honest, conventional banks are going to be much more difficult to deal with than a private individual. So not all is lost if your mortgage is with a bank. But best advice I can give you is talk. Make sure you're actually, working with whoever you can work with to come up with a solution. If you just bury your head in the sand, it will not go well. at that point, if there's no one to talk to, the bank has no other option but to foreclose. So figure something out, make sure that you can open that channel of communication and just talk, figure out what you can do together.
Yeah, and that's great advice. Keeping those lines of communication open is so important and so helpful when you are facing any type of situation, specifically foreclosure. Now, in the industry, you've been around for a while. What have you seen kind of in 2024 as it pertains to your portfolio or just colleagues' portfolio around kind of the increase of foreclosure with kind of where interest rates are and just kind of the debt load that people are seeing?
We're in an interesting time, and it's going to be really interesting to see over the next 12, 24 months where it goes. We've got a whole lot of homeowners that did refinance in 2020, 2021 when rates were really, really low, which is fantastic. And if you could hang on to those low rates and if you can just stick it out with whatever troubles or difficulties you're facing, that's going to be your best bet because those are historically low rates. So that's my best piece of advice on that. Do what you can to hang on to that rate. Now, that being said, another thing that we're seeing that is kind of on the rise, I would say, is seller financing. Seller financing is not brand new. It's been around forever, literally since the dawn of time. We can go back and we can look in the Bible and find examples of loans being sold to other people and things like that. Like it's not new at all. But it's been on the rise for sure. As interest rates are going up and as inflation's going up, it's getting tougher and tougher for people to qualify with a regular conventional bank. So there are a number of seller financing professionals out there who will provide the financing for you. Here's the caveat. It's going to be at a higher rate. If the bank is charging 6%, a seller finance deal is probably going to be like 7 or 8 or 9. So just that's kind of the thing to be prepared for. It will be at a higher rate. However, the qualification will be easier. So you got to kind of weigh that with your personal situation and see what's going to work for you. But there's definitely been a rise in that industry and with the seller finance, which is great for me because that's what I buy. I buy seller finance notes a lot, not exclusively, but I really like those. I like that personal touch with the borrower. I like being able to interface with them directly and just figure out what we can do together. A lot of that happens with the seller finance stuff. So I really enjoy that.
Yep. So Nathan, a couple of things that I want to help our listeners understand is that when Nathan is talking about seller finance paper or he's talking about a seller finance note, he's basically talking about a seller knows the borrower, right? Because they are the one actually writing the not necessarily creating the note, but like they're the ones who are kind of backing the note and providing the capital for that transaction. And a traditional note, a bank or a lender would provide that, and there may be no type of relation or anything like that. And so that's the difference there. The other thing, from a recommendation perspective, are you suggesting or recommending that people who may be facing foreclosure look at getting a potential, seller or maybe individual they know to finance them?
I think that's a good solution. It can be. And again, you got to be a little bit careful because everybody's situation is a little bit different. But that could be a good strategy. If you can find somebody who's probably local to you, Google it. You can find whether they're local or not, honestly. But if you can find somebody who's willing to, in essence, refinance you, where they would pay off the bank whatever they're owed, and then your loan is now with this individual. And again, like I say, it's probably going to be at a higher rate, but weigh your options and see if that's something that'll work for you, because that could be a way to help save your home.
Well, Nathan, that's actually a first on the Foreclosure Fix podcast. We've heard people recommend reverse mortgages, modifications, and all these other things. But I think you are the first guest to say, hey, get somebody else just to, refinance you, an individual. And I think that's a really great recommendation, because I think oftentimes when people think about their mortgage, and a delinquent mortgage at that, what they forget is that there are fees and arrears and different costs that go into it that may take a mortgage that's at like a 6% and jump the actual percentage increase month over month to 10+% because of all the junk fees that they may be incurring. And so having someone else who's an individual give you a loan at a lower interest rate or even maybe a higher interest rate than your note at 8% could still save you a ton of money, especially if it's amortized over a longer period of time or has a balloon payment or whatever else may be the case. So I think that's really a phenomenal recommendation.
And I just want to preface it again, because think of it from that investor's perspective. You're not paying on your mortgage and you're facing some kind of hardship. So the risk for that investor is higher. So understand that that's where the investor is coming from. From an outside perspective, if you can kind of remove yourself from the situation and say, what would I do? Yes, it's going to be, it's a riskier loan for that investor. So that's why it's going to be at a higher interest rate. That's why it's going to be, a little more expensive on that side. But think of it as a whole. Is that something that's going to work for you, where you can actually save your home and then live in that home? Is it worth it? And that's a question that you're going to have to answer yourself, but it's an option.
Definitely a good option and a viable option for a lot of folks. One of the things I know my listeners are probably thinking is like, where do you find somebody if you don't have anybody in your family? Like if you don't have any rich uncles or cousins or aunts or something like that, where would you find somebody who would want to do that or want to say, hey, I can lend to you enough, especially if I've been delinquent before, especially if my credit's in the toilet. Like, where do you find those people?
I would start with Google. The other place I would hope is I would try talking to some different realtors. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes realtors will have built up some kind of a network and they will maybe know somebody that is willing to be that lender. If they're not, try a different realtor. Or if you're a realtor, expand your network, find some of those guys that might be able to provide that kind of a financing option. But so networking, Google, heck, I'd even try Facebook and then just see if there's anybody out there that might just pipe up and say, hey, you know what? I'd be interested in something like that. Let's have a look.
Yeah. So, he said networking, Google, Facebook. Another place where homeowners definitely should look at is their local real estate investor associations, right?
Yep.
Because those folks are people who understand real estate, who have probably done some type of seller carryback or some type of financing. And so that may be another good place that you can check. Now, the thing that we always like to reiterate on this podcast is that if you're facing foreclosure, taking action sooner rather than later will always lead you to the best outcome. Because if you're a week away from the foreclosure sale, trying to figure out someone to give you a new note on your property is going to be very, very difficult. And so you have to keep that in mind. But if you have weeks or months or maybe even years in some states before the foreclosure sale, taking actions like this will really help you. And that's really great that you point that out.
Agreed.
So
it's better.
In your experience, when you look at your portfolio, right, because the market is a little bit more frothy right now, I would say from a interest rate perspective and just from the current debt that people are holding on their credit cards and things like that. You have a performing note fund. Are you seeing more delinquencies at this point in your fund, or are things pretty much staying kind of consistent and steady?
So far, pretty consistent. I haven't seen really a major uptick. And we'll see. I don't expect that to continue. I think we're going to see the pinch is getting tighter and tighter. So I expect we're going to see delinquencies rise. By how much and, to what level, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be 2008 all over again, but I do think we're in for a rise in, delinquencies, foreclosures. I think that's going to be on the rise.
I got you. The other question I had for you is, if you are kind of one of those homeowners where you can see the writing on the wall, like, I missed the payment here. I, have a couple bills. My credit card balances are getting high. What recommendations do you have for those homeowners right now before it gets bad?
Oh boy. Again, talk. So credit cards, for example, figure out your resources. I remember seeing years ago, I used to watch Oprah with my wife. Don't judge me. She's great.
You get a car, right?
They would do this on the show. I remember seeing probably a couple of different times where they would call up the credit card company and talk to them and say, hey, so what's the best rate you can offer me? And then they'd come back with a different number. And if it's not 19%, all of a sudden they dropped it to 15. Or they say, and then you say, is that the best you can do? And they'd come back again. Actually, we could do 10. I mean, that's significant. That's huge. So again, talk, see what people will do. There's no harm in asking. There really isn't. It doesn't go on some kind of permanent record that you ask for a discount. You might as well give it a shot. What if you could save, $500 a month by lowering an interest rate on a credit card that you're behind on? Give it a shot.
No, and I agree with you 100%. There's that saying out there that closed mouths don't get fed, right? And I am of the mindset that it's worth a shot, and you can ask, and you never know. Sometimes you will get that request that you're getting, specifically when you're dealing with lenders. I know many folks who don't mind giving a 1 month forbearance to folks because it allows them to get caught up on their payments. And so I think it's really, really important that you heed that advice and take the time to call your credit card companies, call any lender that you may have, and see if they can work something out for you before it is too late. It is so much better to communicate proactively than reactively. And, just like my wife always tells me, it's better to ask for permission, I guess, than forgiveness, right? Although I'm typically asking for forgiveness versus permission.
The thing I think to realize for people, and again, put yourself in their shoes, in the lender's shoes. From the lender's perspective, they're lenders. They're not property owners. They don't actually want to own your property. For the vast majority of cases, they don't actually want your house. It just happens to be that that's their collateral. That's the leverage that they have. They would much rather just collect monthly payments. I'm speaking as a lender. I would much rather just collect monthly payments. So I'm not actually interested in taking over people's houses at all. I'm much more interested in just getting paid every month. So it's very much to my advantage to have that conversation with the borrower if they'll have it with me and say, okay, what can we do? How can we work this out? How can we get you back on track? And what's that look like?
Absolutely. I know that I think Tracy G and Fred Rooney just released some information regarding kind of the seller finance loans that they publish kind of pretty frequently or annually at least. And like you said, they've seen a significant uptick in lots of seller financing. And I do think that is a viable solution for some folks where they just don't explore. And I think because it's maybe a little bit of shame around telling folks that you've hit a financial rough patch, or you just don't know that that's a viable option, outside of going to a big bank. And so I appreciate you bringing that kind of concept to our listeners and presenting that as another solution to folks facing foreclosure.
Yeah. And Tracy and Fred are actually going to be at the conference. They are going to take part of a panel and show their slides and talk about, that rise in seller financing and kind of the historical data that we can look at together. So I'm excited to have them there. That's great.
Excellent. Well, that brings me to my favorite part of the podcast, which is our bow tie round. And it's where our listeners get to tie one on with our guest, Nathan Turner. The B in bow tie round stands for your best advice for somebody facing foreclosure. The O stands for one thing you're grateful for. And the W stands for your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story. So Nathan, what is your best advice for someone facing foreclosure?
Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't try to ignore it. Don't try to think that it's just going to go away. It won't. It won't. It's one of those things. It will march on unless and until you do something about it. And I know that can be very difficult. I know that can be scary and embarrassing and all of those things. I get it. I totally get it. I have talked to so many people over the years and I've heard the stories, but don't just think it'll go away. It won't. And it's not going to end well. So get out there, talk, make something happen. You can do it.
Awesome. Talk. Y'all heard the man. All right. One thing you're grateful for right now.
Always and forever, my wife. She's amazing. She's so great. We've been entrepreneurs together from the beginning. I've never had, a quote unquote real job. It's just been one thing after another, and it's just been the two of us. We're the dream team. And so I'm just always grateful for her. She's fantastic.
No, I agree. Your wife is pretty awesome. I got a chance to meet her last year at DME, and you are a lucky man. She's a great person. So I echo your sentiments.
Yeah.
And your wildest or most interesting foreclosure related story?
Can I tell you a refinance one? Sure.
Now that'd be awesome.
All right. So here's one. This is one of my favorites. where I had purchased a loan. It was actually a lease option, I believe. I'm not mistaken. I'll try to get the details right. This was a couple of years ago. I went back to him and said, okay, have a look at this. Maybe it wasn't a lease option. In any case, he was paying a really high interest rate with me. And I said, at the time, I think rates at the bank were around 4%. And I think he was paying me 9%. So I said, okay, have a look. And I printed out an amortization chart at 9% and one at 4%. I said, now look at this. Look at how much you're going to be paying me over the next 25 years. Look at what could happen if you refinance and go back to a bank and get it at a much lower rate. In my situation right now, I can't actually lower your rate. This is what I can offer you. Go and figure out what you can do with your local bank and get refinanced. So fast forward a little bit, he goes, I knew he had a good credit score, so I knew that was a good option for him. So he goes and talks to the bank. They agreed for the refinance, except there was one problem. They came and did an inspection on the house, and the furnace that he had in the house was old, outdated, wasn't going to pass for the bank. It wasn't good enough. And the solution for that was he needed a whole new system. It was like $11,000 for this new heating system that he needed in the house, particularly because he needed one that had like a higher level filter. He had some breathing issues, so health issues that required kind of a higher priced, higher level type machine. So he came back to me and said, so this is the issue. Here's the problem. I need this new furnace, but I don't have 11 grand that I can just drop on this. And so that's where we're at. So I said, okay, so you're telling me if we can get you a new furnace, we can get this loan paid off, you can get it at a lower rate, and then everyone goes off and is happy. And I knew that the bank was willing to include that in the refinance. They would finance an additional 11%, but he would have to pay that up front. And he didn't have it. So I said, okay, here's what we'll do. I will front the 11. We'll add that to the balance of your loan, and then bank will refinance. And that's exactly what happened. So he got a new furnace. He got refinanced at a lower rate. I got paid off, which is actually great for me. And now the bank's got a new customer that is very happy to be there. So win-win-win all the way around. That was my favorite story. I love that one because it just goes to show how we're here to help. We really, really are. Note investors are here to help find solutions, find, answers to problems that you've been facing. Reach out. We're here to help.
Man, that is an awesome story. And I duly believe that it echoes kind of our sentiment here, where it's all about helping homeowners kind of just navigate that real estate journey. And so, Nathan, I appreciate you hopping on the podcast today. Please do me a favor and let our listeners know how they can follow your journey, how they can learn more about DME and things like that.
So sneak peek this is what I decided this year is this year at the conference. I usually kick it off. I do the first talk. This year, I'm actually going to talk about my journey and talk about kind of where I started, how I got going, and where I am today, and how anybody can do that. I'm not special, as much as I like to think I am sometimes, but I'm really not. Anybody could do this. So I'm going to kind of talk about my journey and how I got there, all that kind of thing. So there's the conference website, diversifiedmortgageexpo.com. If there are people that are looking for a passive investment, that's really my main job is running this fund. That's Earnest Investing is my company for that. Earnestinvesting.com is the website for that. Feel free to go check out either of those. You can contact me through either one of those websites. And I would love to chat.
Well, Nathan, we appreciate you. We appreciate you for hopping on today. And if you are interested, I will also be down in Nashville at DME. So looking forward to that event coming up here just in May. And y'all, I appreciate you for checking us out. If the mission to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure resonates with you, do us a favor, like, subscribe, or share the podcast with someone who you know it can help. Also, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. It helps the algorithm. Send us a comment. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I love you and God bless you. Take care. The views and opinions on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we highly recommend you contact a qualified legal professional.